Okay, well, Jingmei has seen her heritage in a new light. She's discovered, hey, this is all right. And she finally accepts herself when she travels to Shanghai. So that's a good turning point.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with your heritage. It's cool learning about it as well. So it's good that she finally slowly accepted it.
Right.
And the article says, likewise, Tan recognized this for herself upon reaching adulthood. So the author, Amy Tan, she realized that, hey, there is nothing wrong with, being Chinese or having a Chinese heritage. It's actually super cool.
Right.
So that's why we can use likewise. Likewise here just means in the same way or in addition. So in addition to, Jingmei learning or liking her heritage, Amy Tan realized the same thing too when she became an adult.
No, I just have this feeling that when she was an adolescent, she experienced a lot of the same harshness or the same strict rules or criticism maybe that Jingmei did. So once she got to adulthood, once that sort of period was over, she kind of went, hey, it's not all bad.
Yeah,
there's good things too.
I think I understand where my parents are coming from.
Yeah.
And our parents do, they do this in a different way. But I think a lot of Asian parents, they like a lot of tough love.
Right.
It means like, they're kind of harsh or tough to you, but they want you to be strong. So I think that's what I learned from my parents or my Asian parents.
And it's a good lesson for when you get into the real world because the world is not easy. So if you're stronger, you're probably better off. Now, like we said, the world is not easy. You'll probably figure that out once you get to adulthood. And this is a noun, and it's just the period of life when you are an adulthood, or when you are an adult. Yeah. So childhood is when you're a child. Adolescence is when you're a teenager, and adulthood is when you're an adult.
Yeah, so luckily you'll go through all those phases and you'll be just fine. Don't worry.
You will, don't worry.
All right, so let's continue reading. It says, communication is the biggest obstacle separating the elder and younger characters in the Joy Luck Club. So that's true. Communication is super important. But
you gotta be able to talk about these things.
Yeah, you have to be able to talk to people too. And this was an obstacle for them. Communication was an obstacle for, the moms and the daughters in this story. So an obstacle is a noun, and it means something that makes it very difficult or difficult to do something. An obstacle can also be a physical object that, is in front of you, and it blocks your path, and it blocks your way, and you have to find a way to go over it or go around it. So we can think about obstacles like that as well. Now we can say they must overcome a number of obstacles before the restaurant can be open. So they have a lot of things that they have to do, such as maybe getting a license or finding a place to rent and finding people and cooks and stuff before this restaurant can open.
So much stuff. It's kind of similar to the word that we talked about in day one that we're going to talk about again in a second. Barrier. Remember that? It's something that stops you from achieving success. So we have to remove these barriers and these obstacles before we can move forward. All right, and we did talk about communication being a big problem, and we also see this. It says here, this is caused, that's this problem with communication, somewhat by a language barrier. Okay, so we saw that this problem is somewhat caused by a language barrier. This adverb, somewhat, is another way of saying kind of. Now, it means that something happens or is true to some degree, but maybe not 100%. So here we're saying that a language barrier is only part of the reason that the characters have trouble communicating. It's not all of the reason. Here's an example. Quinn is somewhat unhappy with her report, so she asked for a bit more time to work on it. Okay, so this language barrier is kind of preventing them from talking. Maybe the older ladies of the Joy Luck Club don't speak English as well as their daughters do, sort of thing.
So, and then the daughters can't speak Chinese that well, so they don't really have the ability to talk or communicate with each other. And this is what we see later on in the article. It says, mainly though, it's the character's inability to communicate their needs and emotions to one another.
Right.
That's right. It's very difficult if you don't know a language too well and you want to talk about your feelings.
Right.
It's so hard for you to express your feelings in another language, especially if you don't speak it well.
Sometimes it's hard to communicate those feelings just in the language that you do speak in, right?
That's right.
That's why we fight so often.
That's true.
Yeah.
All right, so we keep saying seeing the word communicate. So communicate is a verb and it means to share information or messages to other people. Now, when you communicate with people, you can write your message as well. You can say your message. You can even move your hands around to, hand signal to communicate with people, because some people do that. They use sign language.
That's right.
So for example, we can say it's important to communicate well with each other if you're working in a big team.
That's right. You won't be much of a team if you can't talk to each other.
Yeah.
Okay, so they are having problems talking with each other. It's a little bit because of language, but also because it's difficult to say what you feel sometimes. And here it says, hard as the characters try, they struggle to find ways to relate. Now, there's an important grammar pattern we have to talk about in that sentence. It starts by using an adjective or an adverb. So we use the word hard. Then we use the word as, so hard as. And then we have a subject and a verb. So hard as they try. Okay. Then we have a new clause and we start with a different subject and a different verb. Okay. Hard as they try. The people struggle to relate, basically. Okay, now we use this grammar pattern as another way of saying that one thing is preventing another thing from being true or existing. So using the example from our article, we could also say this idea using different words, the words although and though. Let's give an example. Although the characters try hard, they still struggle to find ways to relate.
That's true.
Okay. Now here's another example just to make it a bit more clear. Although Megan is really smart, she still has some trouble with math. Maybe it's just not her thing. We could also say, smart as Megan is, she still has some trouble with math.
Okay, so I think it's easier now that we see an example here. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
All right, so it says next in the article, in the end, though Jingmei lacked the words to reach Suyuan, she found a way to form a connection through action. Okay, so it was difficult for her to, of course, speak Chinese to her mother, or maybe, vice versa, her mother speaking English to her, but she found a connection through action. Now, connection here is a noun and it means something that joins or connects two or more things. In this article, the connection means a relationship between two people. We're connecting this person and that person. And it can be, a connection between people in the same family or friends, or even between businesses as well.
That's right.
So between anybody, basically. For example, we said, the prisoner maintained a connection with his family by sending letters to them from jail.
Okay, so you don't always need to speak the way that you need to communicate. You can show people that you mean something by doing something. You can give them a hug, write a card,
give flowers.
Exactly. There are all these different ways to communicate your feelings. All right, well, I hope you guys learned a lot about relationships between parents. It is time for us to finish up our story. It's gonna make me go call my mom. Maybe you should go talk to your mom too, but let's finish off with our For You chat before we do.